Hello and welcome to Rooted and Unwithered. I'm Cole Newton, and the following article originally posted on September 10th, 2021, and it is titled The American Nightmare. This week I have begun reading through the first volume of Right Now Counts Forever, which is the 4-volume collection of R.C. Sproul's monthly columns on current events from the Table Talk magazine. This first article is from May 1977, and I found those early ones really fascinating. I've heard some make the comparisons of the U.S.'s present condition to, like, the 1970s, especially when it comes to inflation and crime rates and things like that. Now, being born in the 90s, I am certainly not able to personally compare the two time periods, but reading Sproul's thoughts, however, leads me to believe that it just might be a fair assessment. His article from August 1977 is titled The American Dream, and it is particularly interesting. So in the article, Sproul uses July 4th and the previous year's bicentennial celebration to consider the present condition of the American dream, namely, quote, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, inalienable rights endowed by God, end quote. He briefly examines the, quote, time of cynicism, unquote, toward these ideals before which that the generation of the 70s, quote, didn't quite know whether to salute or sleep in, end quote. Briskly considering each of the three, Sproul laments that life is, quote, indeed an inalienable right, but not to unborn infants. If life is isolated from sanctity, the dream becomes a nightmare and the value of human life is cheapened, end quote. His discussion of liberty centers around the confusion between liberty and autonomy. Quote, what happens when the liberated person demands the right to do whatever he pleases with no moral restraint? The individual who lives without restraint becomes himself one who tyrannizes those around him, end quote. And finally, he remarks that, quote, if anything will destroy the American dream, it will be the confusion of happiness with pleasure. Our lust for pleasure enslaves us and again turns the dream into a nightmare. The lust of pleasure is not our inalienable right, end quote. And he concludes the article simply enough by saying, quote, life, sanctity, liberty, law, happiness, obedience. Divorce them, and it destroys forever, end quote. To have been written 44 years ago, Sproul's musings are no less topical today. In fact, they're perhaps even more blatantly so. Of course, things have changed. Again, history does not repeat, but it does rhyme. Today's choice is not to salute or sleep in, as Sproul said. It is to salute or to disavow entirely. Yet the three-pronged address of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is largely similar to today. The recent abortion law in Texas has brought out abortion screaming into the spotlight, offering a pro-life victory while also further exposing the pro-abortion faction as they form partnerships with satanic temples. COVID lockdowns, mask mandates, vaccine passports have people arguing the proper relationship between liberty, law, and autonomy with fervent passion. And of course, in our increasingly secular society, the lust for pleasure is now often the primary ground of morality. Now, I'm no prophet to be able to predict the future success or defeat of the American dream. I do know, however, that, quote, what has been is what will be. What has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Now, that's not Sproul, that's Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 9. We should not be surprised, therefore, to find our society repeating itself. I also know that we are not called to trust in chariots or horses, but in the name of the Lord our God. Nations, you see, will all inevitably collapse and fall, but God's people rise and stand upright. Our God is still in the business of giving to his beloved sleep, even if the American dream does indeed become a nightmare. Thank you so much for listening. For more resources for knowing and loving God's Word, please visit bcnewton.co. And until next time, grace and peace.